afternoon. Everybody smiled last night. Everybody have a good time? Very good. I'd like to welcome you to the next speaking session of the afternoon. And if everybody would go ahead and find a seat, we'll begin. I got quiet here. Everybody enjoyed the costume contest last night. Wasn't that wonderful? How many people were here were in, as they say, in New Orleans mask? How many were able to get the costume last night? I was disguised as a day for the street. Without further ado, at this time, we would like to present the great Koenig Chekhov debate for You're Never Alone When You're Schizophrenic.
First of all, I'd like to say that if something goes wrong today, it's Walter Koenig's fault, not mine. Okay, I think now you can hear me on the microphone. Only this one. Okay. Здравствуйте, товарищи, как поживаете? My name is Baton. The topic of this afternoon's debate, as it was yesterday, is about Chekhov and Koenig and good Lord, I'm starting already. Okay, one moment. Let me organize my thoughts here. This is the great Chekhov Koenig debate, or to put it more
Nobody's recording this.
You talk a little slow. Okay, the topic of this afternoon's debate, the human being versus the heroic alter ego, or more precisely, shall it be better to be a human person and stumble along in a mortal coil spanning 70 by experiencing all manner of insufferable indignity resulting in depression and rejection and oppression, or to be the heroic alter ego and soar among the stars, living life of mythical proportions in an existence that courts eternity. Representing the human person is Walter Koenig. Representing the heroic alter ego is me, Commander Chekhov. We will hear first the opening comments of Mr. Koenig. Thank you. By the way, my name is Koenig. Well, I think the advantages of being a human being are self-evident. I mean, look at me. Must be. Here I am, flesh and blood, fully dimensional, not an alter ego concoction of some axe women caprice, not a purple rose product plucked from the printed page, but a human being, an inspiration, many years in the crafting, a fine blend of passion, perception, and philanthropy. God's work, nature's pride. My God, I think I'm going to be sick. Can you believe this? This is the noble piece of work, ladies and gentlemen, who got caught sitting on the giant in the airplane bathroom with his pants down. No matter, I read that book you wrote. Listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. He writes a book all about himself, and he puts my name on the cover in order to sell it. Now that's way out of line. What was out of line were all the people milling around outside the bedroom, waiting for an autograph when the door stuck open. Incidentally, the autograph they wanted was mine, not yours. Now that story is really hitting below the belt. But since you're so intent on toilet fails, what about the time in Space Heat when Mr. Khan first came aboard the Enterprise? And you hadn't graduated in Bridget, we're still working on the third deck behind the boiler room. And we're so sick with Malakovsky's malady, a 23rd century version of Montezuma's Revenge, that you have hidden yourself away in the bathroom with air for hours and hours, while poor Mr. Khan I will never forget. It was that incident that broke his entire personality. I mean, if it wasn't for that incident, he could have been a nice guy in a white suit with a small friend. If it wasn't for that incident, he never would have captured the Reliant, of course to be destroyed, of course to melt commit suicide, and never seen the rise from Poland what we did. Can you believe this ridiculous person? Why do you keep telling people I was in space? I was never in space. And speaking of heroic, what about that time in deadly years when you had that surge for adrenaline and you didn't grow old because you were so frightened? You forget. If it wasn't for me sacrificing my body to science, Dr. McCoy would never have found an antidote. It was my own selfishness that saved the crew. Sure, I remember more skin samples check off, more blood samples check off. It's up, I gotta run out of samples. You are not the placement person. You also forget how improbably reasons I fought and risked my life against the Klingons because they insulted Captain Kirk, the finest captain in the Federation. Would you have done the same for William Shatner? Don't talk to me about courage. You're right, I shouldn't. I mean, I know this guy is coming out with a Chekhov doll and an arm pocket in it. It doesn't have a bell, but you can set it so there in 15 minutes it screams. You know, you shouldn't get too funny with me, kid, though. When you started on Star Trek, you already turned 31. When I came aboard the Enterprise, I was only 22. I got 9 years on you, boy, chick. If you get no little fisticuffs here, you wouldn't stand much of a chance. Besides, I look a lot better than you do. Sure, 6 pounds an acre, $2,000 custom-made uniform. Look. This is getting way out of hand. What do you say we elevate this lady to a higher plane? Sure, like the one which you lost your pants in the bedroom. No. Let's discuss the ramifications intended on the separate identities of the human being and the alter ego. What have you said? For example, I have a life that goes on 24 hours a day. Yours at its best in the 60s is 1 hour a week, and now in the 80s it's what? A couple of hours every 2 or 3 years? What kind of existence is that? I see your point, sure. I live every minute of the day, I breathe the air, I smell the flowers, I experience the weather changing. I interact with 1,000 different people in 1,000 different ways. Very true. But I wouldn't get to breathe the smog, to smell the flowers, on the stockyards, the slaughterhouses, to experience 100-degree temperature in the summer, and tornadoes, floods, volcanic eruptions, and earthquakes the rest of the time. Not to mention interacting with 1,000 different people, half of whom you know what to blow up the world, or segregate everybody who meets you. It's so much better to live like that than to travel among the stars, to work in peace and love, or to fly in a spaceship with peoples of all nationalities, to have extraordinary adventures, to learn and grow from these experiences over time, maintaining the prime directive. Boy, oh boy, but I wouldn't get to be in your Gucci's. Okay. Let's talking about peace and love. What about physical love? Man doesn't live by close encounters of the third kind alone, you know. What about sex? The rapturous joy, the exquisite pleasure, the unbridled euphoria, deeply personal, shared intimacy between two loving people. I challenge you to come here even one episode in which you had a profound sexual experience. Not in the apple, not in the Spectre of the Gun, not even in the way to Eden. I mean, I've seen all of your shows over and over again. God knows. And never once did I see you do anything more than kiss a girl. Very true. But then you didn't see what was left on the cutting room floor. When you talk about your Star Trek outtakes, yeah, well, we call those bloopers. Believe me, these were not bloopers. Throughout several galaxies, Pavel Chekhov is known as, how do I say this with humility, an incredible lover. Hey, I believe it for the master of learning something. Sure, when I think of the lyricism of love, the poetry of passion, the very first image that pops into my head is you and that drill throw from Gangsters of Yourself. No, I think I'm going to throw a bowl of borscht in your face. Not to mention your way with women in Day of the Dove when you tried to rape that poor Klingon lady. Now that was a smooth move. I was not in my right mind. That happens to you a lot, doesn't it? I was not in my right mind only one time in my entire life. Well, you know, what about in Mirror Mirror when you tried to assassinate your beloved captain? That wasn't me. It wasn't the first one. Really? It was the other Pavel Chekhov, your twin brother. I have no brother. The other Pavel Chekhov looked exactly like you. It wasn't you. It was your twin brother because you don't have a twin brother. You keep repeating everything. The other Pavel Chekhov wasn't you. It wasn't your twin brother because you don't have a twin brother. Only one time in your life you weren't in your right mind. You keep repeating everything. I'm not trying to make a point here. You know what? But I think you were written by little old Carrot from Leningrad. Oh yeah, well let me tell you something. It wasn't for me. It was great adventures up here on CD Alpha 5 and Genesis. Oh yeah? It wasn't for me. You wouldn't be down here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Oh yeah? It was Turk, Cossack, Cossack, nerd, Bolshevik. Oh yeah? Yeah.
They always knew you were crazy. And we love Lola.
Okay, let me read to you the article that I alluded to yesterday. For those of you who wasn't here yesterday, by the way. Oh, good. So some of you didn't even hear that. This is a magazine called Star Trek: The Official Fan Club. And for those of you who are not members, this is an article which quotes Leonard Nimoy. Concerning the storyline of Star Trek before Star Trek 4, as Nimoy foresee the film ending the Star Trek saga. I think this particular story we're going to do in Star Trek 4 will probably be the third part of what is turning out to be really unintentional trilogy. Star Trek 2, 3, and 4, I think, are going to turn out to be a package of films together. By that I mean the death of Spock in Star Trek 2, the search for Spock and the rescue of Spock in Star Trek 3, and now in Star Trek 4, the ascension of Chekhov to the role of... No, it doesn't say that. And now in Star Trek 4, we will deal with the problem that our guys have gotten themselves into in Star Trek 3. I think that after Star Trek 4, there will be a clean slate and they can start again. In Star Trek 5 with any kind of story they want to tell. I'm quite confident that as long as these films continue to do well, that Paramount will continue to make them. I don't see why not. I'm sure the studio's attitude is that they're going to take these one at a time. I don't see why it can't go on. Everybody seems to be happy to come back to this when he says, I and everybody else, you're all coming back, we're all looking forward. Alright, that really amounts to most of the information that I can tell you regarding the story. Other than the fact that I have heard through the rumor mill, perhaps with a little bit more credibility than most rumors have, that the story will take us back in time. Probably in the 20th century, to a time not too distant from ours. Well, obviously, it can't be too distant to us, since it won't be before us, but somewhere between the year 2000 and 1985. And that is supposed to be kind of a lighthearted story, not a heavy melodrama. As Leonard alludes to in that article, they will tie up the loose ends of Star Trek, but I feel pretty confident that it's not going to be the trial of James D. Kirk. That's not going to be the story or the thrust of the story. We will probably have to somehow deal with the fact that we sabotaged the Excelsior, stole the Enterprise, and all that kind of stuff. But that may be the springboard, the starting point, but not the story that we will be involved in. Everybody will be back, all the regulars, and the 7 regulars that you know, and conceivably, please don't press me on this, conceivably 1 or 2 other people who have made multiple appearances on the show. Don't press me because I was asked not to get into that because, yes, that person or persons was in the first draft. The first draft was very large, had many pages, probably 150, 160 pages, perhaps even more. And in editing, those circumstances might change. As I said again yesterday, that the worst thing in the world is for an editor to read the first draft because the roles are always more detailed, more expanded, there's more to do. In the first draft, then when they start cutting down for time, a lot of that changes. So I've happened any number of times on the series. In fact, on the series, it even happened that I was in an episode in the first draft. And by the time they got around to the polish and finish the final draft, I wasn't in the episode anymore. So that's disheartening. the time schedule has been changed again, and now it looks like we're going to get started in February. On the good side is that they're very pleased with the first draft that these two young writers turned in. It's a very lovely story, and now Harp Bennett is writing the second draft, and then Leonard will do a polish on that, Leonard England. The scheduled release date is still the first week of December 1986. I don't know if the costumes are going to change. If we go back into the 20th century, they may have to look differently. You know, I don't know. I'm speculating. The presence or absence of Eddie Murphy is still to be decided, depending on his schedule, his enthusiasm or lack thereof for the screenplay when he reads it, and the studio's approval, since they have a final word on whether he would work in the film. All those contingencies make the possibility of this involvement, I think, less than 50-50. A part has been written for him, and it's my understanding that it's a large cameo, something that can be shot conceivably in a week or less. So those who are afraid or concerned that his presence might sabotage the Star Trek universe, make it a movie about Eddie Murphy, I think that is unjustified. God, I'll say all this and then I'll see the script and it'll be, entirely different. I don't know how many times I've said something, feeling quite confident that I'm talking, officially, that my information is accurate and discovered that it isn't so. However, as at this juncture, my information is that it is a small role, a good small role, but not one that would undermine the project the way the Richard Pryor persona was handled in Superman 3. So there's that. Now, any other questions you had concerning Star Trek? I'd be happy. Yes?
Not Star Trek, concerning Walter Koenig. Are you going to do another book?
Another book?
Book.
I don't really think so. I think that the only way I would do another book is if the pocketbook approached me and offered, to subsidize me out front. As
Not a Star Trek.
Oh, just another book in general. Well, maybe somewhere down the line. I don't know. I'm trying to put together a screenplay now. I'm working on a comedy screenplay, and I have a producer interested. And actually, he's working with me. We're going to try to sell it to get it into shape. And that looks like it's still a ways off. But I can only do one thing at a time. I really try to finish whatever project I'm on, good, bad, or different, before I start something else. Then I'm against the wall. Doing the show with Mark Leonard? Yes. Well, we don't have any dates at this point. We did it in June or July. I don't remember which now. I think it was July. In Prescott, Arizona, for 4 nights, and it was artistically very successful. The audience attendance was not what we hoped. It's possible we might do it for Creation Con in New York. I talked to Adam Malin about that, and he seemed interested in doing that. Now, we haven't set a date. I don't know when that next New York. It certainly won't be any longer this year, perhaps next year. But I would like to continue doing it if we can. Yeah.
In the TV episode Spacey, it established the future history of the world. Probably as eugenics was starting right now now. Since we've gotten here and there's no sign of eugenics wars, do you think the script of the Star Trek story is going to explain why there are eugenics?
How did you know? I would hazard a guess that we'll probably ignore that completely. Is there a hand raised? Okay, I can't see the other lights. So.
One of our favorite characters was killed off the Enterprise.
I was not. Yes, go ahead.
Enterprise brother.
Oh, yes, indeed. It's more than a favorite character. I think really it is. It's close to any entity being synonymous with Star Trek. I think the Enterprise certainly was. Certainly it's the symbol of Star Trek. I find it difficult to believe that it will not return in some manner, whether it's this ship or another ship that is refitted and to look like Enterprise, or whether they rebuild it. I find it very hard to believe that it can be dispatched that easily when it has become such an institution. And there's a young man here yesterday, I feel very sorry for him. The man here yesterday who had the Enterprise tattooed on his right shoulder blade. I mean, it's about that big. What's he going to do if we don't have the Enterprise? I mean, will they think of the little people? Yes.
It's indicated she studied psychiatry at Cornell. Why did you choose to go into acting and you ever regret not becoming a psychiatrist?
Well, I was a pre-med major at Cornell. You can't study psychiatry on the undergraduate level. When I transferred from Cornell to UCLA, I transferred from pre-med to psychology, and my intention at that point was to become a psychologist. The reason why I changed from pre-med and my original goal to be a psychiatrist to one of psychology was because I found it was an easier curriculum. I was not a whiz at physical sciences. Everybody else got 3 ounces of bright orange yield in organic chemistry, and I got a quarter of an ounce and it was green. I knew that I was going to always have a problem. I was strictly a C student when it came to the sciences. And why I didn't pursue psychology was simply because I finally determined that psychology was sort of the thing I disliked doing least, which is hardly a recommendation for a career. I really don't feel that, and I still don't, that it's a social science, it's not a physical science. There are no absolutes. There is nothing that you can carve in stone. There are theories and schools of thought, and they keep changing. And I needed something. Now, this is going to sound very curious. I needed some feeling of stability. Turning to acting is hardly a stable career, but I really felt that I'd rather devote myself to that kind of stability than to one as a psychologist. Yes?
What was your favorite episode and why was it?
I think my favorite episode was The City on the Edge of Forever. I need to know something from you, please. Who directed The City on the Edge of Forever? Loud? Does anybody know? Because I'm supposed to go to San Francisco for a month-long Star Trek marathon, and they've given me these things to say, to introduce different episodes. And I know it's an act. They say that it's the only episode that Gene Roddenberry directed, The City on the Edge of Forever. Okay, well, I can now tell them that Gene Roddenberry, I'm going to be really embarrassed. Hi, Gene Roddenberry directed this episode, kind of failing from all you people. Okay. City on the Edge of Forever. It's the most passionate, the most moving story I've seen on Star Trek. One of the most moving stories that I've seen on television. I thought it was beautifully rendered. I thought Bill's performance was excellent. I've always been mad about Joe Collins anyway.
Walter, you read part of the City of the Edge?
No, I never had.
Please do. Because they launched a character there, a trooper, which was a cameo part that was giving somebody the kind of identification with Star Trek that the character gave Sammy Adams. Sarah Jones gave Sammy Adams.
Right.
And it was completely, totally lost. I know for what reason, but I would look at it sometime and see what you thought could have been done with it.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
We all love the bloopers from the TV show Louisiana. You don't think the Lucas were made in the movie?
No, there weren't any English. Did you put an announcement?
I was going to tell you, it's very difficult to see the hands over here and cut most people. Go ahead, because
Okay.
I'm just going to help you.
Okay, thank you, sir. No, there weren't any bloopers made of the series, of the films, for a couple of reasons. One, because it's expensive to print. I mean, the exposure of the film, the raw stock isn't so bad. But if you have a mistake and you have to print the mistake, for the purpose of having bloopers, that becomes expensive. In addition, there was a considerable amount of litigation involving the bloopers and the screening of the bloopers at various lectures, conventions, etc. The Screen Actors Guild stipulates that for such an acting performance is seen, then there must be residual payment for that performance, royalty payment. And obviously, as many times as the bloopers have been shown, actors have not received payment for that. I don't think any of the actors complained. It's simply that I figured it out that at one point back in the late 70s, that they were going to pay each actor for each time they were shown. Whoever was responsible would have to pay them about $400,000. Of course, many times as they showed way back then. So rather than having to deal with that kind of problem, rather than exacerbate that kind of problem, they simply not make bloopers from the
Of course, it helped that the actors didn't make any mistakes.
Right. That's of course, you realize that the only actor in the bloopers didn't make a mistake was Mr. Chekhov.
Walter, in my opinion, Search for Spock was far and away the best of the films, and I know that it did a marvelous story, but also Leonard Nimoy's sensitive directing. And I wonder if he will continue to expand the characters that we all love in the next film.
Well, let's pray. My understanding again is that the first draft of the screenplay elaborated on the characters. All the characters had something good to do. That's what I was told. Not by Leonard or Harvey, but by someone else who had read the script. Whether or not that will carry forth in the final draft is only conjecture. It is going to involve this band of people, the story. So, let me put it this way, they can't do any less than Chekhov than they did in 3, so hopefully we'll learn. Somebody else? Yes?
When, after you had discovered it, after you had discovered the sensor lights going off, and Captain Kirk went to Bruce, Scotty came over and you said something to him in Russian. What did you say?
Я не слышите what? That's what I said.
Translate.
I didn't hear the question.
Oh, what was it that Chekhov said when after Scotty came over and I spoke in Russian? Я не слышите what? It means, why doesn't Chekhov have a method No, it was, I am not crazy, so there. Because they were on the console that showed what I was doing. Incidentally, let me take a brief moment to get a trite sentimental and lugubrious and wishy-washy about that particular moment. When I started on Star Trek 3, I was very unhappy, which is, with a Russian soul, is my want about 50% of the time. But most specifically, because of the fact that I was very disappointed in the part. As I explained yesterday, I later came to terms with that because I realized that some part of the fact that I had less to do was attributable to the fact that George, Jimmy, and Michelle had more to do, and I was truly happy for them. I was happy for them because they're my buddies, because they were very gracious to me in Star Trek 2. They were the first people to come and congratulate me. What was that? What was the question? I got so far afield. What was the question?
First, they don't understand.
What? That was what we were talking about. I was right. So there I was, sulking and my thumb in my mouth, and sitting by myself. And Leonard came over to me and said, "Walt, I'd like to give you a line in Russian to say." Now, obviously that line would not didn't make a character or performance out of what I had to do, but it was a gesture, a sensitive gesture that I was enormously grateful for and very impressed by. He knew that I wasn't there. He did not know the circumstances, because I did not discuss the problems I had with other people involved with decisions on the story and salary, etc. But he knew that something was amiss, and he brought that idea to me. And it just lifted all of my depression. I just was so touched by it that I couldn't keep my head. And thereafter, it was a very pleasant experience working on the film. Yes?
Since we're talking about Ron, we had asked Scotty at Prayer for Tomcat in Ron, which is what was one of his favorite lines, is that off his shaft. And since we're talking about lines, is that your favorite line, or is there another line you said that?
Up my shaft, certainly.
You have said that,
Right.
think
Right.
of the line, and glad you said.
Right. Well, maybe not my favorite line, but my most difficult line of all time, my most difficult line of all time was recurred during the series days when we were all, I know I'm not answering your question, I'm getting into another story here, but that's okay. When we were working at the cons, working on the bridge, looking out into space, and instead of seeing, space, or even a black screen, we didn't have that in the series days, what we saw was the sound stage. And all we saw were the crew guys, drinking coffee and scratching themselves. Not the most aesthetic sights, sure. And to make sure that our focus, because we had this big cutout panel where we were looking, it was quite large. So to concentrate our focus, they would erect a metal stanchion with a white metal flag on it. So everybody looked there, when you look out into space. Well, every once in a while, one of the crew guys, having had a particularly, I'm surmising, particularly frustrating evening the night before, would bring in the centerfold of Playboy and tap it to that screen. And there I was at my console, looking out into space, supposedly seeing all sorts of extraterrestrial grotesquerie, and indeed seeing this voluptuous female form, and having to say, this is obviously the most typical line, was having to say, "Kid, I don't know what that is." Am I going to write any more comic books these days? I don't see that in the future. That was fun. I enjoyed it. Mark Wolfman, the fellow who was the editor of this DC comic books, or Star Trek at the time, approached me with the idea, and I told him that he told me that it was free reign, and when he tested his metal in that jump in, I said, "How free?" He said, "Anything you want to do?" I said, "Check out to get the girl, take the ship." Check out to be the main character of the cover of the comic book. He said, "Absolutely." Well, how can I resist? I waited 19 years for that opportunity. So, so that's fun. And I got it out of my system. I'm not sure that I'm interested in doing it again. Yes?
Yesterday you mentioned a system for punching buttons, being different colored meaning. I didn't catch where were you talking about the series or the movie?
The series, yeah. Yeah, when we did the film, they gave us schematics, and they had everything. It was all, it was all functional. All of these were operational. Some simply turned on lights, but others turned on the 8mm projectors that were behind the set for the reverse shooting, so we see things on the screen. So they were all functionally at the press secretary. We did not have that. It was not arbitrary the way it was in the television series. What are you explaining here?
Okay, back to
Going back to your question about the cartage line we had, is that the same one that showed on that blooper tape along, that's on the video along the black influences?
What are you talking about?
Which, when they had the Playboy pin-up on,
Bloopers and blunders?
they had a blooper tape, they have video tape,
Yeah,
blooper from Star Trek
yeah.
and Lab Game. You may not have seen it, but they have something similar to that on that tape, and I was hoping it was the same thing.
I really don't know what you're referring to, so I can't answer the question. Yes.
Why of all the people on the show are you the one that always ends up yelling and screaming?
This guy's great, Caroline.
Different meaning for male and female. Well, I guess they felt that the character supposedly was the youngest, and therefore the most vulnerable, and most likely would be less in control, and more likely would be less unbecoming for Chekhov to screen than it would for, Scotty or McCoy or somebody else. So I got people on screen. I never objected to that because usually that there was a scene or part of a scene involved. I mean, you don't walk down the corridor and go, ah! It usually comes from something. So that makes it sound, I never objected to it. Yes.
I understand practical jokes was running deal a lot of serious success, especially with never need one. Do you remember anything with practical jokes through the holidays?
No, I wasn't involved. I don't know. I'm not sure.
With black ink.
The bicycle.
The bicycle, yeah.
Well, see, I wasn't there. I wasn't there when they did all that. That's the first year's show. So I don't know about black ink and I don't know about bicycles. I mean, I've heard about it, but I don't know anything about it. I do know that something happened in Star Trek 2 that wasn't meant to be a black practical joke, but it certainly had to be really hilarious, with the exception of yours truly. My first appearance on the set, not in the story, but on the set of Star Trek 2, was when I stepped out of the elevator after having been in sick bay, and after having been cleaned up from that creature that had been in my ear, and stepping forward and saying, "Can you use another pen that moment?" Now the reason why it was my first appearance is because they shot all the bridge stuff in order, in sequence. And they had already been shooting 2 weeks before I came on the show. And they were, at that point in the script, the bridge sequences where I made my first appearance. Well, I just got from sick bay, and they felt that I had to show in some way that I had, that McCoy had done his marvels with me. So they devised the bandage, the prop guy, in all seriousness, devised the bandage to put over my ear. And they sort of slung it over in spirit of 76 fashion. And I didn't even get to look at it. I just put it on, and I went into the elevator waiting for my cue. Bear in mind, this is my first day, my first moment on the set. And I'm a little nervous. I mean, if I'm nervous doing, the Chekhov's Canyon debate, you can imagine. I'm a little nervous. I'm trying to concentrate and get myself in control, at the same time realizing I just got from sick bay and I'm in some pain, but yet I have a strong sense of loyalty and dedication and love for my compatriots, and fighting the imbalance caused by the damage to my cerebellum. You believe all this nonsense? So I step out with this bandage and I kind of stagger forward and I say, and that's all I get out, and there's Admiral Kirk rolling on the floor. There's Mr. Spock, tears. Well, that's the first thing I did was So, I went over to the makeup and they got some kind of prosthetic piece of plastic and they stuck it in my ear. And I went back into the elevator, now thoroughly rattled, I want you to know. Thoroughly rattled after the experience. And trying to get myself calm and calm. Dealing with the problems of the loss of balance, my integrity, my sense of dedication, my loyalty, the pain. I step out of the elevator, my hand to God, and I step forward and say, "Can you whittle level pedal?" Could not get one word out. Not one word. There's Admiral Kirk rolling. Yes. The other thing, on Star Trek, reading George Lessons of the story of it, and it's, again, a very embarrassing story. We were taking pictures of the day Judith Anderson. Lovely lady, in her 80s, very fragile, very elegant, just a lovely lady, and very demanding. Which is one marvelous thing, that she's so delicate and fragile and very demanding, a great sense of strength. And they were asked if we'd like to take individual pictures with her. First, everybody sees the opportunity, you know, to have a picture. It becomes like part of history. Dame Judith Anderson, of course, you know, has been a great classical actress for half a century. So I got up there, and she's sitting on the chair, and I'm standing behind her. Her hand is on the armrest, and I'm kind of leaning over. And I'm very excited about something. The photographer's getting ready to take a picture. And I'm smiling, and she says very quietly, "You're hurting my arm." And I smile, it's going in one ear and out the other. I'm hearing the words, it's having no effect on my brain. She says, "You're hurting my arm." It's such a successful project, and everybody, the characters, everybody loves the characters and the relationships. At that point, if we eliminate that point, I'm not sure. Well, I just think that this is really addressing the same thing. But I do have, you know, I think our sense of friendship, certainly between George, Michelle, and I, and Jimmy too, is you know, based on mutual respect to begin with. But beyond that, I think there's also a commonality, a feeling regarding the lack of participation, the lack of involvement. And I think there was something I could change would have been early on to establish all the supporting characters in a stronger way, so that we would all have had greater opportunities. And I think that, besides being a vested interest, I think it would have enhanced something really the show as well, because I think each actor brings a very unique contribution to Star Trek, and those contributions have not been explored as well as they might have. I think in that way, I would have changed things very much. Yeah.
You made it up after the race scene, possibly. Shatner slapped
You are ready, would you, right?
and then he thought, picked you off like a child. You really do that? Is it that strong?
Well, he really picked me up, you know. I guess at that time I weighed about 130 pounds. So yeah, I guess he is. He works out a lot. You know, he does karate and he's quite physical. Yeah, he did it. Yeah.
All three of the Star Trek films have been worked with
which of the three do you feel participated most successfully?
Well, again, I'm probably speaking from my personal perspective, colored by my own involvement. I thought Star Trek II was the best division. I thought it for a couple of reasons. I mean, there's some very specific scenes that I don't think there was anything quite as touching in Star Trek, in any other Star Trek